Hello, Rickie Lee Jones. What a pleasure to meet you. How are you?
Doing very well today, thank you.
As opposed to yesterday and tomorrow, or generally okay?
Very well today. We'll see about the past later on.
Yeah, well, you're right, though, because we all should live in the moment, and it actually doesn't matter what happened before or what's going to happen in the future. It's all about right now, yeah?
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, good. You must be sick and tired already of doing interviews, and I'm so sorry that you're going to have to say it all again. I know that the very few
right. And, I like the record a lot, and so far, I haven't done more than 10 of them, in the course of a couple of weeks. So it's just 3 today. If I look tired, I always look tired at 5 o'clock. So
you hit a wall at 5 p.m. I understand that too. Rickie, if it's okay with you, I do obviously want to talk about the record, which I also really adore. But I don't know if they told you, I want to use this for an entire episode of A Breath of Fresh Air, which profiles all the artists that I love and takes them back right to the beginning up until present day. So we will spend a whole lot of time talking about the record and previewing the tracks on that. But are you okay if we take a bit of a stroll down memory lane and talk about your life to bring you to current date?
Sure.
Oh, that's great. I bet you're so sick and tired of talking about it. I'm sorry. I'll try and make it a little bit different for you with a few kind of different questions. Rickie Lee Jones, I know that you have been around for ages, and you're one of the very few female musicians who've endured decades, and you just seem to be getting better and better. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I think that the popularity thing, the popularity, what pendulum, swings far away and then comes back. So, no matter what you make or how great your show is or what you do, if it's out there, it's just not going to happen. I feel like the pendulum is swinging this way, and people are looking up and noticing. And then also we've just made a great record that followed a really great book. So that may have something to do with it, but it feels like it's also a kind of spiritual thing of sometimes you're far away and sometimes you're close.
Right. You've let's talk about this record for a minute and the book. You've really come back to your roots here, haven't you?
Yeah, I guess, I have a lot of roots, but I've come back to what I do most naturally, as far as singing goes, which is jazz singing. I started out as a jazz singer before I started writing songs. So, yeah, I guess roots, sure.
What's your greatest strength? Is it the songwriting or is it the singing? Or probably that's not a fair question for you to judge what your greatest strength is. Maybe which do you prefer?
Well, I would say that my greatest strength is singing. That's how I feel. But in fact, people record my songs probably more than they play me on the radio. I think I've been kind of equal. I think that people who know my work love my singer-songwriting stuff. And but as a stylist, I think I've had a lot of impact on how people sing. So I if you're just asking me how I feel, I'm most comfortable singing anything because I love to sing.
You always loved to sing, didn't you? You started out at the age of, well, I can't go back any before you were about 19, but you were determined to be a singer and to make it in this business since you were a teenager, right?
Yeah. Well, I had, aspirations. My girlfriend and I would sit and write songs all day after school. And so, yes, I can't say I was initially determined because I hadn't grown up yet, but it was definitely a big hope. Yeah.
So when you sat with your girlfriend and wrote songs after school, what prompted that? Who were your influences at that time that made you?
Nash and Young were probably the biggest influences on us, and then it dispersed into Young and Stills and then Cat Stevens, and then Elton John might have come in a little bit. All those pop artists from those last years at high school and Taj Mahal were the big impacts. Then I discovered Laura Nyro, and that kind of shifted all that folky stuff away to a more urban and sophisticated thing. So I was constantly being educated because there was so much diverse music. It was just, as the 60s ended, all these new voices showed up, and you could go in any direction you wanted to. Rod Stewart, who led David Bowie, and all this stuff, which didn't particularly speak to me, but it was all there to influence you and become part of you.
Yeah, well, I'm of the same generation and grew up with all the same music around me. Yet I never felt compelled to sit down and start trying to write a song. So what was it in you that you said to yourself, "Oh, I think I'll try and do this too"?
Well, yeah, well, my dad's a musician. His father was a musician. So I think it was a natural, if I knew how to do it, you know, I was the only one of all the kids who sang, but I did, I sang all the time. So I don't know how to answer your question except to say that that's just who I was at a very young age.
And who taught you the craft of songwriting?
Yeah, and songwriting I taught myself, but singing, my father helped me a lot.
So your parents promoted your profession as a musician, as a singer. There was never.
It. I'm not sure they promoted it. You know, when I was 8 or 9, and my dad, who was often away, came home and discovered I could sing, it was a big way that he could relate to me. So, so we had that between us for a little while. But I think the main thing that they gave me was support to be an artist of any kind. I think a lot of parents think that's just play, and you have to quit doing the things you love and do something you don't love. Yeah. And that's what being a grown-up is. And my parents definitely did not do that with me.
They didn't want you to be a doctor or a lawyer or an astronaut or anything else. They said, "You like music, go for it, girl."
That's right. Exactly.
How lucky are you? That's awesome. Were there times where you questioned that decision to go forward in that profession?
Well, I only spent a year or a year and a half really seriously trying to go forward in it. And it was really hard. I mean, there were other things happening. I was homeless. I was the kind of girl that just couldn't get a job and hold it. So I think, you know, life was leading me to the stage in a weird way. But, you know, I questioned everything, frankly, because my choices, if something didn't happen in the music field, whether writing for other people or anything, my choices were bad. And whatever they were, a stenographer or a waitress, I wasn't going to be a very happy person. So this was the only path. It's, you know, who am I to say what would have happened? But this seemed like the only path towards a possible happy life, and one that, you know, went out into the world and made other people happy. What a great job.
Yeah,
so
I couldn't agree more.
I was so lucky. I mean, you know, I was a high school dropout. I was in the 6 or 9 months before I got signed, I was homeless. I was sleeping on people's couches.
Where was that? Was that when you got to LA already?
In Venice. I'd been in LA a while, but you can read about it in the book. But it was an amazing drop down to the very bottom and rise up to the very top in a year, 15 months.
Not very long, really, when you think about it. Some people struggle all their lives to get a hit out, and you're telling me that it's 12 or 15 months when you were discovered with that song Easy Money first, right?
That's right. That's right.
And it was Lal George, the founder of the band Little Feat, who came upon that. Can you tell us the story of that?
Sure. So I was about 22, I think, when I met Ivan Alls in Venice. And I met him, I'd been in LA and had some weird things happen. And I got dropped off in Venice, where I met Ivan and Alfred Johnson and Yusuf Rahman, and a couple people who started to get me work in music. Suddenly they heard me sing and said, I can get you a job singing background. And Alfred said, I want to write songs with you. And Ivan said, I want to show you some things about the craft of songwriting. When you start this thought, you mustn't mix metaphors. You got to follow it through to the end. And I just, soaked up everything I could for these 3 or 4 months that I was with those folks. And it made me feel like a professional. And then what happened was I just ran out of money. I'd had a job for a little while and unemployment, and I ran out of everything. So I was crashing with my old boyfriend when a next door neighbor I had a long time said, I want to be your manager. I believe in you. And I'm going to get you photos, and I'm going to introduce you to a lawyer, and we're going to make a tape and send it to the record companies. And that's exactly what he did. And the photograph on the cover of Pieces of Treasure, the new record, is from that photo session that Nick Mathey arranged, my very first photo session.
Amazing. That's a wonderful story. So when he did all of that for you, what happened next? Is that how Lau George got onto that song and used it on his solo album?
In that couple of months where I told you where I was crashing with my old boyfriend again, I called Ivan and said, I'm thinking of just going back home to my mom's because, and it's just like the darkest hour and all that. Yeah. But I said, I keep trying and nothing's happening. He said, give me a day or give me an hour. I can't remember anymore. Give me an hour, give me a day. And be here, because I was at a payphone, and I'll call you back at the payphone. And he called back and he said, all right. I called Lowell, and I knew he knew Lowell, but I didn't expect him to call anybody. He knew a lot of people. Yeah. And he's coming over. He wants to hear Easy Money, because Ivan sang some Easy Money to him over the phone. There was a Joe at the back door. And the next day, my life changed. The next day, Lowell came over with a Sony reel-to-reel and recorded me singing Easy Money. And he came back a month later. He had made it his first single. I mean, that's how it happened. Bam, bam.
Wow. You must have been jumping out of your skin with excitement.
I don't think so. I think I was super cool. I was always
only on the outside, and the outside as well as the inside. You're super cool always.
Super cool.
Really? No, but you said, I mean, for something like that to happen in your life to be changed up so much, how do you remain super cool?
Because you have to remain super cool. You have when your destiny meets you, you have to meet it as if it was meant to be there. So if you go, it goes, oh, I'm at the wrong door. You have to come on in. I've been waiting for you.
That's awesome advice. So, I mean, your advice to anybody listening to this would be to remain super cool at any time, no matter what.
You betcha.
And trust
and if you want to howl, just, wait till you're all alone and howl just a little bit. But know that you're meant to be there. So don't howl too much, because you were always supposed to be there. It was just an accident that you weren't. So be glad that the accident happened, but don't howl like you're not meant to be there. You were meant to be there.
Have you always been so spiritual?
I'm not sure. I don't know who I was before. I change every few years, but I was not always confident, except when it came to music. I was totally confident. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But as a girl or a person having to sit with other people and talk, not so confident, no.
Really? And obviously that changed over time as you matured and became an adult.
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. Who knew all this about you? We're going to have to get all the goss behind it in the new book. It was 1979 when your debut album, the Rickie Lee Jones album, won the Grammy for the Best New Artist. You can't tell me you were super cool still then when you picked up the Grammy Award.
I was super cool. Watch it on the, you can see it on the internet. I was the coolest thing. Oh my God. So when did the exciting moments happen? You know, if they called and said, you're nominated for 6 Grammys, I thought, good, I should be. When they said, and then I said, I'm not going to go to the Grammy ceremony. I don't believe in it. I don't believe they should pit us against each other and say this guy won, but this guy didn't. And I want to keep my feet on the ground. And if I ever had them on the ground, but if I go to this ceremony, then I'm participating in this glamour thing that I really don't believe in. And at the last minute, like, you know, an hour before when the ceremony probably had started, and I said, I want to go. So I just went, Rickie, why are you doing this? Go to the ceremony. And you know, maybe it was fear of losing. I don't know why. You know, they're not my people. Don't get me wrong. I never felt comfortable around them, but. So Bob Regier came and picked me up in a limo, and we hurried over to the ceremony. We got in. You have to wait while they're talking, and at the cut to commercial, they sat me in a chair and they announced my category, and I came up and got it. I was like still out of breath from running in. I wore what I thought was the coolest outfit ever, which is street clothes looking good. I wore my leather jacket and a boa, and I had some capris, some pants I'd had shortened. And so there were some people that thought I should have dressed up glamorously, but that's not who musicians are. That's who movie stars are, but we're weirdos. And when you have dressers, you know, put you in costume and have you look like somebody that you're not, how will I ever believe anything you sing? You know, you have to be who you are all the time.
Right.
And sometimes I want to put on a beautiful dress, I will, but it might be to go to dinner. You know, and I've just been fiercely independent that way, because that's the only way I could keep myself intact. But the one thing that happened at the Grammys that at the Grammy ceremony that was really cool was when I walked up on stage, all of the balconies started cheering. And that's where the kids are, you know, that's where the regular people sit. And I don't know if you can hear it in the thing, but they're, yeah. And that was like, I went, right. So I did the right thing.
You showed
I
up.
came, but I came as myself. Then at the after party, which is why everybody goes anyway, Bob Dylan came up to me, and you know, I just, when you talk about what you're talking about, if there was ever a moment where I went,
Pinch me.
that was it. You know, when he came up and said, you are a real poet. Don't ever stop what you're doing. And Russ Heidelman was there. He was looking at me going, so, I'm a real poet. And so that was the kind of thing that as the years have gone by, I've just gone, wasn't that a beautiful, look at that. That's a beautiful flower that never dies. What a kind thing for him to say.
Of course.
I'm sure that he felt some inspiration about this girl. I don't know if he did in, you know, what he thought in later years, because he's quite an enigma. But at that night, it was pretty wonderful.
And of course, he would have been one of your inspirations going way back too, wouldn't he?
Everybody, it's impossible to not, you know, he's like Adam, Andy.
I hear you. And suffice to say, you didn't even have time to have hair and makeup done for the Grammys, I'd imagine, either.
I did my I did my hat.
Good for you.
That's
It's a wonderful lesson in how to remain authentic, and authenticity is obviously so important to you, both personally and through your music. And I guess that's always been part of your appeal. That song that was a global hit that came off that first album and was honoured at the Grammy Awards was, of course, Chucky's in Love. And I know you've told the story a million times around that, but can you share with my audience what that's all about?
That song is about a friend named Chucky Wise, who was one of the hangers-on Santa Monica Boulevard of Tom Waits. He was his good friend and confidant. And really, if I thought about it, a guiding light for him. He had worked in radio in Denver, and he was so knowledgeable about everything rhythm and blues. And I think he passed a lot of knowledge on to Waits. He had a special affinity for what Waits did back then. This was, 77, 78, 79. And so I was a friend of theirs on the periphery. And I just got this, so I saw an envelope with his name on it that said Charles E. Weiss. I went, Charles E. Weiss, Chuck E. Weiss, Chuck E. Ooh. So I went, because, Chucky is usually Chucky.
Yeah.
And so making it the E opened up a whole other story. It's a Damon Runyon kind of group of characters. And Chucky was never in love with me, don't get me wrong, but it was just kind of inspired by different conversations people were having and behaviors that I was seeing, and that's the story of Chuck E's in Love. But that vowel went on to be a trend in music and culture for, I'd say, most of the 80s.
Really?
People called themselves Tone E and Sheila E and She E. It was just using the E as the IE sound. It was a phenomenon. And I thought, wow, people really like that song. But they like the spelling of the song just as much. So.
And was he actually in love?
No, like I said, it
was poetic license. And how did he feel about having that song written about him? I bet he didn't remain super cool.
No, he did not remain super cool. I think it was really hard on him. It was such a big hit, and he had nothing to do with it, but he had to reap the attention. And people always make fun of you if a girl makes you famous anyway, but I think it was hard on him. And then he got a gig in LA at the Central because he was Chuck E. But so that's a dubious thing, if you don't like it, don't take that gig. But I think it was a blessing and a curse for him throughout his life.
Right. Yeah. And did he remain with Tom Waits?
I can't really say. I bowed out of that picture. So
right. So you didn't maintain a friendship with Tom either. I often wonder whatever became of him, why he's such a hermit these days.
Yeah, we
don't know. And you were the it girl of the 80s. So I mean, through the 70s it was all happening for you, but for the 80s you were this trendsetter. Your beautiful big smile and your long blonde hair and your spandex one piece and your lacy elbow length gloves and heels. You were really out there doing it according to the fashion, weren't you?
Yes, I was. And I think one reason is because I didn't dress like anybody else. So people noticed how I dressed, and they liked it. So they went out and dressed like it, and then in a short time it was everywhere. So
again, you remain super cool about that. You're trend setting for an entire generation in terms not only of the music they're listening to, but how they're dressing.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You have to you have to find some way to contain yourself. And if you have a big impact or no impact, you can't cry about it, and you can't run around and go, woo, woo, woo. Now I might go, woo, woo, woo. But when I was 25, I was like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, how amazing to look back on it. But I hear what you're saying, though, too, because if you let it all get away from you, that's how a lot of people went down with all the fame and fortune, didn't they? So if you had it together and kept a lid on it all for yourself, is that how you managed to survive it?
That's exactly right. Because otherwise you'll get puffed up, you know, all the great things and so much attention. And I did get a little puffed up, but it would be impossible not to. But you want to keep your feet on the ground and stay a human being. When success, if success comes on a big scale like that, you know, there is no map for how to act and how to have a life, and so it's too easy to go, I'm better than other people, I'm more important than other people, and that's death. So, you know, when great things happen, it's not to say don't congratulate yourself, but you got to keep your feet on the ground, you know.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you. Time magazine actually called you the Duchess of Coolsville. I love that. But despite that title,
too, but there's a new article coming out in Uncut where they call me the Pirate Queen. I think I might like that even more.
that's awesome. That can be your epitaph on the tombstone. Not wishing you any demise. That's fabulous. But when Time magazine did name you the Duchess of Coolsville, and you were completely cool all the way through, what happened then in 1985 when you abdicated that crown of cool and moved yourself off to France? You walked away.
I think that I just couldn't cope anymore with the changing tides of it. You know, I had a wonderful tour in Australia, and they were like, you're like the Beatles here. But when I got home, you know, I broke up with my boyfriend, and how old was I? I had just turned 30, and I had made the magazine, and done a really wonderful theatrical tour. We did a little bit of it in Australia, but did something very different. You know, I wrote a bit of theater around the songs, and it was very personal stuff and very different. And nobody knew how to really, you know, they were putting me in amphitheaters, and I was trying to do this theater. So there was a huge gap between my creativity and the people that that I reluctantly had around me to help see my vision. And I think it was so disappointing. And I had a little nice time in France that I decided to go there. I confess that I married somebody that I did not know, and who didn't speak any English, and I went, yeah, all right.
Let's go.
And we went to France, and I think that was my way of just breaking everything down into its simplest possible thing, where I got to deal with buying bread. You know, they're mean and they don't understand what I'm saying. And that's what I need right now, because what I don't want to be is the queen of the world. So I went there and lived there for a few years. And then I got pregnant and came back to America and started to record again. But I love my career, and I love success, and I love to get a blue ribbon once in a while. But I don't want to become a superficial person. That's not the right word, but I don't want to become somebody who's constantly sucking at the tit of fame and celebrity, because you'll die from that. You know, you'll never be fed, and you'll die from starvation. You have to have a friend and a little bit of family, and people who maybe like your music, but they don't love it. and they keep your feet on the ground, you know.
Yeah, you had to keep it real all the years. From that theatrical show, do you have a favorite song that you did for that?
Did for what?
The theatrical one that you put out.
A favorite song. I don't know if I have a favorite song. You know, I did that tour with somebody just sent me from Australia, sent me some great pictures from the tour that they'd taken. And Vonda Shepard, who's a fine singer, right, this was her first job. I think she wasn't even 21 yet. And she was one of the characters and played piano. So I think it was more the thrill of the ensemble and the poetry that spilled into a dance thing and into a song.
Got it.
It wasn't the song per se as the thrill of watching the whole thing come to fruition.
Oh, I wish I'd seen it. Sounds awesome. Rickie, in when you did start making music again in 1989, that one the one that you released was Flying Cowboys, and that was produced by Steely Dan's Walter Becker. The first single from that one was Satellites, and that shot straight to #1. So you just couldn't put a foot wrong. You'd managed to have your time out. When you came back, you hit the top again. And 10 years afterwards, in 1999, you got another nod for Flying Cowboys at the Grammys.
Did I?
Yeah, you did. You were completely on fire. I'm not sure why it took so long, but you did. What's Flying Cowboys about? Why Flying Cowboys? Is that a picture of yourself?
Well, I think because pirates thematically was out on the water, so I took them out to the place where there was no water at all. And I grew up in the desert anyway, so in the dreamscape that this stuff comes from, it made some kind of sense. So that's why.
Right. And of course you collaborated with an incredible lot of big name artists.
Every title I've come up with, almost every title, is just another term for heaven, whether it's Traffic from Paradise or Flying Cowboys, even Pirates, The Other Side of Desire. They're all kinds of secret titles for the other world, for the other place.
Wow, you really go deep, don't you? Lots of thoughts to uncover with you that, of course, we have no time to do at all. But what an interesting person you are. No one could ever accuse you of living on the surface, could they? You've collaborated with so many big names, people like Randy Newman, Walter Becker, as we mentioned, Quincy Jones, Tori Amos, even Ben Harper. What was that like in 2012?
Wow. Well, that was a really hard time in my life. The IRS had taken all my money, and I was really in a bad place. But I still had some ideas, and I had this friend named Sheldon, who had been a bass player and contracted a devastating illness, and he had created a recording studio where he could, wouldn't have to travel anymore. So I started going over to Sheldon's to work, and Sheldon was the only person going, "You're so great." For some reason, all that praise you're talking about had fallen all the way. Really? And there was nobody going, "You're really great," except Sheldon. So I went over to Sheldon's, and he'd always say something so kind that I thought, I'm going to record here. And he said, well, Ben Harper, he's made a record here, and I bet you he'd love to work with you. Should I ask him? And even though I thought Ben Harper was like one of the best looking guys I ever saw, I thought, he's just going to make me nervous. At that point, it was quite the opposite of where I am now. I bet exactly the opposite. But I said, I'll give it a try. And I met him, and he's so gorgeous and so kind and incredibly talented. I didn't even know how talented he was yet. He said, I'll tell you, I'll do however you want to do it. I said, okay, don't come till I leave. It's like Catch-22, Colonel Durnall, or whatever his name was. So I record, and then I'd leave, and then he'd come in and listen and maybe put a guitar down or do what he and that was how we made that record. Oh my God, I was so shy. It was just a bad time in my life, and I couldn't bear to be seen or listened to. It was really hard.
Wow, what a come around. Yeah, we go through all sorts of phases through our lives, don't we? And I have to ask you though, despite all of that, you were still super cool?
Super cool. Let's see, I don't know if cool was even in my language anymore. I was just trying to get from one place to the other and get out of the red with the government. And
right.
So, when it comes to playing music and standing on a stage, probably began to shift from performing to standing naked in naked now, standing naked in front of people, and so I used to do a thing where I always had one drink before I played.
What did you
never
drink?
So
what was your drink of choice?
Scotch, something like that.
Like that.
But I don't usually drink ever, so it's a real false thing. And if I'm saying I'm real, how can I possibly be real if I'm taking a drink before I play? So I did this thing in San Francisco about that time where I, for the first time in my life, went out on stage without having a drink. And you don't know how tough my childhood was, moving around so much, but I stood in front of all those people and I let the feeling of love wash over me. And before, I always kept that thing between them and me, so they couldn't hurt me, but I took a chance, and it was good. And that's when, I don't know now how many years it's been, many years now, but that's when I started changing. And so cool, I don't know if some other thing began to happen where an exchange of love and accountability began to happen by showing up on stage.
Amazing.
And now, I like looking at them. I like that they've come to be loved by me. And I think that's what artists don't realize, is they think they're there to get the audience to love them, but we're there to give love. They pay and travel a long way so that you'll look at them and love them with all your might, the way that you sing, the things that you do. And once I realized that, and when this isn't about me, it's about them, then I thought, I love this job. It's kind of like being chosen. It's a good job. And that might be why when you keep referring to being cool, that might be why, because it's a very big job and it's not about me ever.
Yeah. It's if I'm hearing you right, it's like when you give somebody a gift, it's not about the receiver, it's the joy of giving something that really is the prize there, isn't it? It's about giving. Yeah.
Especially if you give something that you didn't want to give, especially if you give something that you really like.
Yeah, that too. So that 2012 album with Ben Harper was called The Devil You Know, and it was a collection of covers that he produced, and an awesome album, which brings us up to 2019's Kicks album, which was songs from you from the Great American Songbook. Again, you turned a little bit into something different. And that one spans 2 decades, the 50s through the 70s, of pop, rock and jazz. And
no jazz on there, but a lot of rock and a little bit of R&B, things like Bad Company stuff, things people wouldn't have expected that I love and wanted to sing. So it was an unusual cover record.
How did you choose which ones to include?
Just by that, it was just, here's what I feel like doing right now.
Yeah.
So that's what we're gonna do. We had tried a few other things. I worked so hard on a tune called Oogum Boogum. I just love that song. But you know, it just didn't work out. I seemed to be better at rock than, even though I love soul from the 1960s, that stuff is very perfect. It's already been done perfectly. So I think the rock stuff was better. And we also did Why Does the Sun Keep on Shining? We did Quicksilver Girl, just an odd collection of songs that I grew up with. And who knows why I picked them? I don't.
Well, we're glad you did, because it's a sensational album. And of course, now your latest release is all about jazz. It's called Pieces of Treasure. And it's a reunion with your lifelong friend and the legendary producer, Russ Titleman, who actually co-produced your albums in the 80s, and that very first album with Chucky's on it.
Yeah, the first album, Chucky, and the next one, Pirates, were
both Russ Titleman, were they?
Yeah, that's right.
How'd you come full circle back to Russ?
I think after I did Kicks, I you know, to be honest, I just went, I'm just dying here. I can't find something I adore anymore. I'm ending. And that was truly how I felt. How I got the idea to call Russ, I don't know, but I thought, you know, maybe I think I thought I think I shouldn't produce, I should just sing, because I don't want to hold these instruments anymore. I want to open up my arms and sing to the crowd. And the only way that's going to happen is if I can sing jazz. Because in the stuff I write, the musicians are very dependent on me playing it. So I was thinking that, and then when I met up with Russ, he said, you have to do a jazz record before you do anything else. We must do the jazz. And I thought, this is right, because I'm getting older. Jazz is a very complicated, you know, story. So I should do it now before my voice has aged out. Oddly enough, in the course of making the record, it seemed like my voice, I found a new way to sing. And so it was, you know, I talked about that pendulum, and it just felt like the pendulum is coming right here, right in front of me again. I feel powerful, and people are acknowledging my work. And so what is it that we seek? Do we seek the stranger to say, I see you? Or do we seek the lover to say, I'll stay? What is it that we want when we do this work for an audience? Why do we go, I go home, I'm so empty? Well, partly because we put up a big wall so people couldn't get in, with good or bad. Right. Yes. Yeah. So if you take that wall down and take in the good, somebody's going to slap you. They're going to say terrible thing. You're going to hear it and read it. Are you prepared to let all the people, especially that internet stuff that you can't go look at, because anybody can say anything now, and they don't know what they're saying. Yeah. So I just think about, why do I do what do I do? I love singing, but what is it I seek? If I want acknowledgement, if I want an award, what do I want? You know, why do I want somebody I don't know and probably wouldn't like to say, here's an award? I say, you can have it, you know? And I don't know why, you know, maybe they're the only guys giving awards. I always thought there could be a peer group, you know, musicians who said, that was a good record, good job. But it also, you know, I thought it feels like they're saying you're worth something. Your career in life will be remembered. Then they create this bullshit thing called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like that, there ain't no musicians who had anything to do with the Rock and Roll Hall. There was Seymour Stein, you know. nothing to do with music. And then they induct year after year, man after man after man after man, who many of them were far inferior to girl or that girl or maybe that girl. So it's so askew to a certain kind of music, nominated and supported by a certain kind of guy. And I just, I go, so if I'm not inducted, you mean I'm going to hell? I mean, I'm going to rock and roll hell? Like, what the fuck? So, and I liked that Joni Mitchell went, I don't want to be in your thing. But it was evil of them to say, you're not invited to be in our thing because you're not a rock and roll. What are you talking about? You've inducted Louis Armstrong. How do you put Louis Armstrong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and not invite one of the premier folk rock goddesses of? So I just thought they are sexist bullshit. So what is it that I want?
Did you find the answer?
I'm going to give you the answer now. In the last 6 months or 3 months or 2 months since I've started doing these interviews, the journalists have said the most remarkable, loving, centered things to me that I could have ever hoped to have heard, that tell me, we heard you, you mattered, and you mattered to my kid. And when I saw you, I went out to find out about jazz. Or when I did that, everything I hoped to have done, people are starting to say, you did that. And that's every, Grammy and every award and every wig and every great dress and everything you go on to, hey, look at me. That's everything. So it's coming to me now. So the question I ask myself is, will you let it in? Will you go ahead and say, I did a good job? Or are you going to keep that wall up?
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm not sure.
I hope you let it down. You're a most extraordinary person with such a gift for songwriting and an even greater gift. Well, no, I can't say even greater, and a huge gift for singing. And your voice is holding up. It's better today than it was 30, 40 years ago, it seems. So
it's able to tell the story still. So
yeah, and wow, you tell it so well. What's your favorite track, Rickie Lee Jones, from Pieces of Treasure? Is there one?
Well, personally, I quite love the last track, which is, I love Just in Time. That's my favorite one. But I also like the very last track, which is All in the Game, because that's a tune that people have kind of thrown away. And I knew that, it's a heartbroken person telling that story. It's a man I think it's somebody saying, I know you're brokenhearted right now and you think he's gone, but he'll come back. And that's where the heartbreak is, because we don't know he'll come back. But in this text, he says, sometimes he won't call, but soon he'll be here. And soon he'll be there is where I find, the perfect balance of pain and hope. And I went, there aren't that many songs that can hit that thing. And he'll kiss you and he'll touch your fingers. It's like, wow, how did people miss that song? So I did it extremely slow so that you'd hear all her heartache and also all the beauty of her waiting. And so I think in that one is a true little piece of treasure. Yes.
The album certainly is Pieces of Treasure. It's wonderful. And we, as an audience, thank you so much for it and revitalizing. As you say, it's a lost art of jazz. It's been sort of put to bed and you're bringing it back. And if your history is any testimonial, you're likely to set it on a run going forward yet again. But just to finish up, tell me about the book. Why the book?
Yes. So the memoir came out in 2021, I guess, during COVID. I had worked on it quite sincerely for 7 to 10 years. And it's a story of my childhood, my wild childhood, not so unlike a lot of Australian childhoods, traveling to the desert and growing up with my my itinerant family, and all the things that happened there. And then hitchhiking in '69 and finding my way to LA, to Venice, and all the adventures before I got famous, which are many and wonderful. And then about 3/4 of the way through the book, fame comes. So I was telling the story of all the family because they're really quite, it's not like, they're a church group and a couple of cool things happened. They're really quite remarkable people, and people got it. I worked hard. At first it was a lot of prose and I had to rewrite it to have a straight ahead narrative. I learned how to write a book as opposed to a song or a poem. And I really love writing, and I hope I have the time and inclination to write more stories about my life because it's fun.
Awesome. That's fabulous. Are they going to take you out singing? You're going to continue doing this your whole career, regardless of the highs and lows that may or may not come?
Yeah, I'd like to be honest, I'd like to write. I'd like to write a TV show. I have a film. I'd like to tell these stories in other mediums. I love to sing, but I am getting older, and at some point it might be terribly difficult for me. So if I could tell stories in other ways, that would be the greatest possible thing that could happen.
Excellent. We look forward to anything that comes from you, Rickie Lee Jones. And I thank you so, so much for being so incredibly generous with your time. What an awesome person you are. And we are, as a generation, well, as all generations, really grateful that you came along and that you've been trend-setting ever since you had the influence over us all. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful questions too. I appreciate it.
You're very kind. It was just fabulous hearing your stories, and this album is truly remarkable. Congratulations.
Next time.
Look forward. Keep well. Bye now.